The big focus today, the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is set to deliver that much anticipated midterm budget policy statement in Cape Town. The nation is bracing for potential tax hikes and spending cuts. The labour unions, though, are calling for the rising cost of living and joblessness to be addressed. Let's hear directly from the unions about their expectations from today's speech. And Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, joins us now. Matthew, good morning to you and welcome as always to the programme. I mean, you know, if I think about years past and medium-term budget speeches, pretty much asking for a similar thing is more of a worker-friendly budget, a budget that will grow the economy, find resources where it can within other departments and direct them to priority needs in the economy or in different departments. It's very much similar. Is there anything uniquely different about what you want and what you think the Finance Minister this time around in this context can do to deliver a lot of the aspirations that the people you represent, the workers, are demanding and looking to?
Yeah, no, so good morning. Thanks for having us. Look, I think for us it's about the fundamental basics. We have a very weak economy, growing barely at 1%, far below what we need to grow to reduce unemployment. We have a 42.6% unemployment rate, 70% youth unemployment rate, really struggling public and municipal services that businesses, that workers, the economy depend upon to grow. So I think for us it's about the fundamentals. You've got to grow the economy, you've got to create jobs, you've got to fix the state. And I think we differ with Treasury when at times they simply say our problem is a debt problem and therefore cut expenditure. We think that is a short-sighted approach. It in fact makes things worse because if you have less staff at home affairs or hospitals or schools, the ability of the state to deliver quality public services that the economy depends upon is severely hampered. I think our approach is that we have a growth crisis, so stimulate the economy. We have an unemployment crisis, so tackle unemployment, especially for young people. And we've got a public service, municipal service delivery crisis. So invest in the quality public services the economy depends upon. But look, I think, Iman, you asked, what is different? We have seen good progress, and let's give credit to government led by the ANC on electricity. A year ago, it was an absolute calamity, but we have seen remarkable progress at Eskom, and it shows you the state can and must be fixed. Eskom has done wonderful work. It's not out of the woods yet by any stretch, but 6 months load shedding. That's a huge boost to the economy. We've seen the South African Revenue Service, where government has appointed competent persons, got rid of corrupt elements, filled vacancies, invested in the IT and the infrastructure capacity of the institution, and SARS is delivering. It's increasing tax compliance, which means revenue for the state to fund public services, to grow the economy, etc. So we think if you take a similar approach across the state, from home affairs to transit to metro rail, etc., we can fix the state and we can, more importantly, grow the economy and create jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to ask for greater compliance and, to ensure that those who do represent the tax base continue to fulfill their responsibilities. But the challenge has got to be to grow that tax base, Matthew, so that more people are in the system, they're contributing, and for those funds then to be spent well. So I guess that's the challenge there. I wanted to get your thoughts on expectations on inflation targeting. And we heard the Reserve Bank governor last month, I think it was, focusing on a move to 4.5% as the midpoint of monetary policy in terms of setting an inflation target, bringing it closer to some of South Africa's other trading partners. We think of Europe, we think of China, the UK and the US. They're at 2% year on year. What might this do and what could the immediate boon be if we manage to begin to move towards that range?
Look, so I think the fundamental issue is that inflation is always the enemy of workers. Workers have less money because they're paid so little. So when inflation comes, it devastates workers' pockets, the ability to take care of families, to pay the debt, buy food, etc. And of course, we should also bear in mind that inflation, overall is measured at a certain rate, but often the goods that workers buy, like electricity, transport, food, etc., has higher rates of inflation than the overall CPI rate. But I think, so that's the fundamental issue. But I think for us right now, a move from a 4.5% to a 3% target, like the governor is saying, is a bit premature. Right now, we need to grow the economy. We have seen inflation falling positively from a peak of 7.8% because of the international oil price spike to 3.8% this past week. That's welcome news. We think we should actually be reinforcing that. And see, let's address the domestic cause of inflation, because there's not much we can do about the international oil price. but we can give support to Eskom to end its dependency on double-digit tariff hikes. We can give support to Transnet to protect food from inflation. We can make sure Metro Rail has all the resources it needs to help shield urban commuters from transport costs, etc. We should also be, as the President said in his very progressive speech to Parliament, look at reducing the fuel tax regime where possible, look at expanding VAT-exempted goods to other essential food and other critical items like school uniforms and so forth. So these are measures we can do. We can also protect poor from inflation by adjusting the SOD grants, the social grants. And we also hope not just to pick on government, but also the private sector too should be paying workers a living wage, making sure that the wages are protected from inflation, reduce the wage gap, etc. But I think for now, Ivan, it's a bit early to have a debate about the inflation target, because what we do want to see right now is the Reserve Bank reducing the repo rate next month and for the next year to really ease the burden upon workers and the economy. So my fear is that if we go to this debate now, we'll be postponing that repo rate cut. And right now, the economy needs that relief. Workers are desperate for that relief. And that's the kind of stimulus we need. We can have the debate later about what is the appropriate level. But I think for now, it's about let's deal with the crisis of today.
Well, let's just say, I mean, you've cited some positive factors there, Matthew, just with regard to the stability when it comes to electricity, the political stability that we have now, which might work in tandem for the betterment of focus on some of the key priority areas in the country. I know elsewhere you've talked about driving infrastructure projects, particularly in the municipalities, and of course that will have the consequential boon of creating more jobs. So overall, I mean, your sentiment going into this, I know these are the demands that you're making, but, you know, are you buoyant that, you know, this will be a budget that you want, that you can live with?
We would love to be, but we suspect we might be disappointed, not because we want to be grumpy, but time and again, Treasury has not risen to the occasion. The economy has been struggling not just for the past few months, but the past few years. Unemployment has been stubbornly high for many, many years. The cuts to the state budgets across departments has been there for some time. So I think for us, we do hope government will rise to the occasion and really respond positively, decisively to the economy. Because no matter how much you cut the budgets of the state, it's not going to resolve the crisis, because the crisis is not an expenditure one. It's a growth crisis. It's a revenue crisis. So you've got to resolve those issues. It doesn't mean you can spend money recklessly. No, you can't do that. That's workers' taxes. But you've got to be a bit smart about how we deal with issues. Government's got a very bold and progressive infrastructure budget of about 943 billion rand over the next 3 years. But we fear in the medium-term budget statement, you're going to see municipalities returning that money unspent, where halfway through the year, you might find some municipalities only spending 30% of their budget because they don't have the capacity. So we've got to also deal with the hard issues of making sure we fill critical vacancies, making sure we capacitate what are often very dysfunctional municipalities or entities, because otherwise you may allocate money but it's not spent. And that's a crisis because that money could have been used elsewhere for industrial financing, etc. But we do need to have a bit of a discussion, say, how do we really grow the economy in the longer term? How do we boost manufacturing, industrial sectors, our export industries? Because the money we allocate for industrial financing, for export incentives, is very small in the broader scheme of things. And we really do need to have a discussion, say, how do we get from a 42% unemployment rate to an unemployment rate under 10% in the next 5 years or so? But we can't sustain this level of unemployment.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about the public sector wage bill, but that will be the subject of things to come. It's quite a big piece, of course, of government fund allocations. But we'll continue to keep up the debate as we build up our coverage towards the 2 p.m. hour when the Finance Minister is to deliver his budget. Thank you, Matthew Parks.